Good morning, everyone. This is Father Nate, missionary priest in Italy, and thanks for joining us today, September 24th, on No Greater Delight, our podcast on Marian feasts and Marian meditations. So today, obviously, the 24th, one of the big devotions is Our Lady of Mercy, also known as Our Lady of Ransom, or Nuestra Señora de Merced, right? So this devotion, even the Abbot Orsini points it out. He also points out, just to get this out of the way, Notre Dame de Roc Amador, or Roc Amador, or Rock of Amateur, in Cahors, Quercy, France. This place of pilgrimage is so named because Saint Amateur, vulgarly called Saint Amant, lived for some time upon this rock, which began to be famous around the year 1140. Okay, perfect. But let's jump back to Our Lady of Mercy, who is also, interestingly enough, I found somewhere that it said she's the patroness of the Dominican Republic, and I thought that was Our Lady of Altagracia. Well, Our Lady of Mercy is also one of the patronesses of the Dominican Republic, right? So we'll come to that story in just a little bit. So if you remember, there's a whole religious order called the Order of Our Lady of Ransom, also sometimes known as the Mercedarians, right? Which was founded in Spain in 1218 by Saint Peter Nolasco. They were created to redeem slaves and other captives, and originally it was a military order which had both knights and monks, right? And then non-knightly ordinary clerics, right? St. Peter Nolasco had fought on the side of Simon de Montfort, the great English baron, who fought for the freedom of people of all classes. And so the order, which was approved by Pope Honorius III, Nolasco was given the rank of commander general, right? Eventually the groups split into different groups. Most of the knights joined the military order of Montesa in 1317, but several members of the order, like the religious order, sailed with Christopher Columbus, and that's how they got to the New World. And that's precisely why she's one of the patronesses of the Dominican Republic. She's also known sometimes as Ma de Dieu de la Mercè in Barcelona, Spain, like the Mother of God of Mercy. So what happened? Well, it was early August 1218, and St. Peter Nolasco, St. Raymond of Peñafort, and James, the King of Aragon, each had a vision of the Virgin Mary asking them to found a religious order dedicated to freeing Christian captives from the Muslims who still held much of Spain, right? So the Order of the Blessed Virgin Mary of Mercy, de la Merced, grew quickly, and they would collect alms and sometimes even offer themselves in exchange for prisoners. They would just say, like, nope, take me instead. You know, this person has a family or whatever. And they would just become the person's slave instead of somebody else, right? Our Lady of Mercy became the city's patroness, the city of Barcelona, that is, after saving it from a plague of locusts in 1687. Before the Counter-Reformation, the Mercedarian order celebrated the feast of Our Lady of Ransom on August 1st. That's when she showed St. Peter Nolasco their white habit. However, the Vatican changed the date to September 24th when it extended the feast to the entire church in 1696. Okay. Since the Second Vatican Council, the observance of Our Lady of Mercy's Day is limited to places that claim her as their patroness, right? Also, the Mercedarians don't usually redeem slaves or captives. They do teaching and chaplaincy work, redeeming them from the slavery to ignorance and things like that. I'm also told that the Barcelona soccer team visits the Basilica of La Mercè after victories in order to thank her for her help. I really do hope that is true. But really quick, too, like we said, she's the patroness, one of the patronesses of the Dominican Republic, precisely because Juan Infante was one of two Mercedarians, was actually Christopher Columbus's confessor. And so we always went with him, right? And so he was there when they landed up in what's now the Dominican Republic. And what else do we have? Yes, there's a whole bunch of information here, but very interesting. It was in 1641, in August and September, that there was a strong earthquake that hit the city of Santo Domingo. Some chronicles say that there were aftershocks for more than 40 days, and people just continued dying. So what did the inhabitants of the city do? Well, they went to the image of Our Lady of Mercy that had been brought, actually, that's the part I should have read, because on the large fleet, this is in September 25th, 1493, there were the 13 missionaries and 2 Mercedarians, right, that left on the second voyage of Columbus. But before leaving, the Queen of Spain had given them both a picture of the Virgin of Mercy, had given them both of these 2 Mercedarian priests, a picture of the Virgin of Mercy, right? So that's how the image was brought there. So frightened, the inhabitants of the city, going back to our story, went to the image of Our Lady of Mercy and prayed before it. They experienced divine favor and some miracles happened. And for that reason, in 1615, the Curia and the royal audience declared Our Lady of Mercy patroness of the city and the island, celebrating her feast on September 8th. In 1710, by royal decree, her feast day was moved to September 24th. Right? So that's why they celebrate it today, and that's why she's also a patroness of the Dominican Republic. Also, interestingly enough, they also celebrate Our Lady of Walsingham, right? We might say Walsingham, but I think it's Walsingham if you're English. According to tradition, there was a Marian apparition to a Lady Richelieu's, so much so that we're told that Our Lady brought Richelieu's soul, so she had this vision, from England to Nazareth to show the house where the Holy Family once lived and which the Annunciation took place. Richelieu was given the task of building a replica of that house in her village in England. So that building became known as the Holy House, and later both a shrine and a focus of pilgrimage to the town of Walsingham, right? The image of Our Lady of Walsingham, the modern one, was carved in Germany and was once associated with the Virgin of Mercy, venerated under the title of Our Lady of Ransom, sometimes called Our Lady of the Dowry, right? But eventually she took the name Our Lady of Walsingham because of the importance of that shrine, right, in Walsingham. In 1897, Pope Leo XIII reestablished the Holy House, rebuilt at the Church of the Annunciation in King's Lynn as a Catholic shrine. At that time, the statue, carved in Germany and blessed by Pope Leo XIII, was placed there. And since 1934, the restored 14th century Slipper Chapel has been the national shrine of Our Lady of Walsingham, right? I skipped over the story, but yeah, it's kind of sad. It's now, I think the original spot is now owned by the Anglicans, but during the Reformation, the shrine was utterly destroyed. But on a happier note, we have just a handful more feasts. They celebrate in a particular way in Vallarpadam in Kochi in Kerala, India, the feast of Our Lady of Ransom, which is what Vallarpadam means. They celebrate Mata Božka Vzpomozuchelka Vernik in Tovagargo in Olesna, Lower Silesia, Poland. That's the Mother of God, Help of Christians. That statue was solemnly crowned in 1994. And last but not least, they also celebrate the Madonna Pellegrina in Berso Inferiore in Brescia, Lombardy, Italy. That means the Pilgrim Madonna. And it commemorates an apparition which took place on, yep, you guessed it, September 24th, 1616. According to tradition, it was on September 24th, 1616, that Marta Damioli Polentini had a vision of the Mother of Jesus, who exhorted her to encourage the Christians of Berso Inferiore to promptly conclude the works of building the parish church, which had begun in 1609. So obviously a number of years had gone by and they hadn't finished it. So Our Lady appeared to ask them to finally get their job done. And they did. And so that's what we're celebrating in the Marian world today on September 24th. For today's reading from True Devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary by St. Louis de Montfort, we continue with Part 1 on devotion to Our Blessed Lady in general, and Section 1, Excellence and Necessity of Devotion to Our Blessed Lady. And again, we're continuing under the 7th point, where St. Louis de Montfort is talking about how Mary is particularly terrible or terrifying to the devil and his crew, right? And again, earlier he mentioned that the reason for this is, on the one hand, because she's so humble, right? He says in a certain way, he's got this beautiful line that he says in a certain sense that that the devil and his fallen angels fear Mary, not only more than all the angels and men, but in some sense more than God himself, right? Because God is all-powerful and everything, and it's so humiliating for the devil to be defeated by a mere human, by a mere creature, right? And then also because Mary, because of her humility, has this great divine power against devils, right? Because of her greatness before the eyes of God. So today we'll continue with these, again, his considerations of why the devil is so afraid of Mary. And we'll continue this at point 53. What Lucifer has lost by pride, Mary has gained by humility. What Eve has damned and lost by disobedience, Mary has saved by obedience. Eve, in obeying the serpent, has destroyed all her children together with herself, and has delivered them to him. Mary, being faithful to God, has saved all her children and servants together with herself, and has consecrated them to his majesty. 54. God has not only set an enmity, but enmities, not simply between Mary and the devil, but between the race of the Holy Virgin and the race of the devil. That is to say, God has set enmities, antipathies, and secret hatreds between the true children and servants of Mary and the children and servants of the devil. They do not love each other mutually. They have no inward correspondence with each other. The children of Belial, the slaves of Satan, the friends of the world, for it's all the same thing, have always up to this time persecuted those who belong to our Blessed Lady, and will in the future persecute them more than ever, just as of old Cain persecuted his brother Abel, and Esau his brother Jacob, who are the figures of the reprobate and the predestined. But the humble Mary will always have the victory over that proud spirit, and so great a victory that she will go the length of crushing his head where his pride dwells. She will always discover the malice of the serpent. She will always counteract his infernal minds and dissipate his diabolical counsels, and will guarantee, even to the end of time, her faithful servants from his cruel claw. But the power of Mary over all the devils will especially break out in the latter times, when Satan will lay his snares against her heel, that is to say, her humble servants and her poor children, whom she will raise up to make war against him. They shall be little and poor in the world's esteem, and abased before all, like the heel, trodden underfoot and persecuted, as the heel is by the other members of the body. But in return for this, they shall be rich in the grace of God, which Mary shall distribute to them abundantly. They shall be great and exalted before God in sanctity, superior to all other creatures by their animated zeal, and leaning so strongly on the divine help, that with the humility of their heel, in union with Mary, they shall crush the head of the devil, and cause Jesus Christ to triumph.
Hello, and we hope that you enjoyed listening to our Marian podcast. In the spirit of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, we say to you that there is no greater delight than to spread the devotion of Our Lady. We hope you share these sentiments and encourage you greatly to share with a loved one. Know that you are always in our prayers, and we ask that you keep us in yours. God bless.